Even adventurer guilds aren't completely immune to country's influence. Adventurers claim to be free and declare themselves outside of any rule, but they still live under their nation's laws. We're armed. That's why it's particularly dangerous to use our force against the country. That's probably what the guild in the empire thinks. Yeah, but if you live under the laws of a country, then you should have no qualms about being absorbed. So why are you so against it? The empire and the kingdom both have their eyes on us. Only adventurers have the power to fight strong monsters, after all. They won't make any impossible demands as long as that stays the same. But it won't work the same way with you, your majesty. If we were absorbed, it's conceivable that you would force us to use our might as a military force against the people. So the main reason you don't want to be absorbed by the country is that you're scared that your power as adventurers would be turned on the people. That's correct, your majesty. We don't want to be used for oppression or war. We don't want to be involved in anything that will result in so much loss of life. Got him? Aints chuckled. He didn't say that he had known as much already. Sit down. I am going to explain what I want you guys to do. Aints ordered Ainzak to sit down facing him again. After the guild master nervously took his seat, Aints began his explanation. I am thinking about having the adventurers perform a completely different job. I want them to discover the unknown and make the world a smaller place. Aints had the feeling Ainzak was looking directly at him for the first time. For example, in the south between the theocracy and the sacred kingdom, there is a wasteland. But do you know the details of the terrain and what sorts of monsters live there? No, there are many different subhuman tribes that live on that land. But no kingdom adventurers who went there ever returned, so we have almost no information about the area. Then how about the mountains southwest of here on the border with the theocracy? We don't know much about that area either. Doesn't that strike you as pathetic? Well, no, considering the adventurers' jobs, it can be helped. They run an organization for protecting the people. They don't need knowledge about places where there are no people then, do they? Although there could be herbs growing there that might help people. Ainzak pursed his lips at the jab. Once the Adventurers Guild is under my control, I want to have adventurers fill in those blanks. Couldn't you have your men do it, your majesty? Don't be a spoil sport, Ainzak. I heard that you used to be an adventurer yourself, so could you say that again, keeping in mind the definition of adventurer? Do you really exist only to battle monsters? I thought adventurers were people who made the unknown known, at least, until I actually investigated. Ainzak bit his lips so hard that it seemed like it would break and bleed. We have to protect the people. No, you don't in the nation of darkness. I, the ruler, will protect the people. You know it to be true based on the recent decrease in requests, right? Ainzak assented with a groan. So what will you do now? Leave the nation of darkness to protect the people in the kingdom and empire? Then you are no more than mercenaries who specialize in monster extermination. Aints paused. Now it was time for the invitation. He had to use his full brain power when choosing each and every word. Your suggestion to have my subordinates perform these tasks isn't wrong. While my subordinates are adept at killing enemies, I question whether they would be able to go into the unknown and build amicable relations with the people they find there. It's embarrassing to admit, but that's the truth. That's why I'd like the adventurers to take on this task, if possible. He was extremely curious about Ainzak's reaction to this, but his presentation wasn't over yet. Well, I'd be having them do such dangerous work, so I'd want to back them up in every way possible. In such a case, it would make sense for the guild to be under my umbrella. No, couldn't you put in requests like normal? Ah, I see. You must be very confident in your abilities. I can fault you for that kind of courage. What do you mean, your majesty? You are saying it's fine for the nation of darkness to disavow any adventurers who journey into the unknown. They might have an unlucky encounter in an area with people who espouse a different culture, right? And you'll clear up any issues that arise on your own as the guild. If you are going to exist as an independent organization, that would be only natural. You'll have to agree to resolve problems in a way such that the nation of darkness doesn't incur any losses. Ainzak fell silent. That's what it means to exist independently and not under nation, right? In other words, if a foreign country took action, you guys would be responsible for handling it. Does what I am saying seem strange to you? Not at all, your majesty. Ainzak shook his head to emphasize his position. I agree with every word you've said. There you go, then. But if we did that, the number of adventurous people in a technical trade would decrease. It takes time to develop capable people. Losing already outstanding individuals would be a huge loss. That's why I want the guild under my umbrella. Then, rather than issue orders, I do my utmost to provide you with support. That's quite an enticing proposal. If you don't mind me asking one question, though, would this exploration of unknown lands be for the purpose of helping the nation of darkness invade? That's a difficult question to answer. I can claim it would never turn out that way. We might even find that the people in the unknown lands are planning to invade us and end up attacking preemptively. For the subhumans in the wasteland, we might invade in the name of demonstrating our power to those ogres, orcs, and so on. If you found violent monsters sharpening their claws nearby, wouldn't you want to get the jump on them? Yes, I see what you mean. But what is it, Your Majesty? No, sorry to break the flow of the conversation. You were going to say something more, wherein you go ahead and continue. Understood. What I was worried about was the possibility of annexing peaceful people by force. For example, are you thinking of elves? Well, perhaps. That has to do with national policy, so I can just lump them all together. If invading and ruling them would benefit the nation of darkness, then I would do that. But if there are no merits, I wouldn't. Isn't that only a matter of course for a country? I will say, though, that if it is simply an invasion, I have an army plenty large enough. I don't expect adventurers to collect intelligence on enemy countries or test out invasion routes. I just want them to seek the unknown and make lots of discoveries. That I can promise. He began again and asked Ainzak a question. You guys consider attractive races separate from the rest, huh? Why didn't you object to the annexation of peaceful peoples when I mentioned invading ogres and orcs? Because they raise subhumans, ha 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 ha. I see, so that's how you think. I understand now. So what's your answer? Ainzak seemed like he wanted to say something, but he shook his head right away. He must have changed his mind. Do you need an immediate answer, Your Majesty? I do like a reply, but I imagine there's a lot of groundwork to be laid down. There will be consultations to be made. It will take a little time, I am sure. But first, I want to hear what you think. Ainzak sat up sharply and fixed his eyes on Ainzak. The distance between them was negligible. I don't like that you are all merely exterminators. It is so sad, and you call yourselves adventurers. Ainzak, what do you think? You adventure for the nation of darkness for me. I really wish for you all. Ainz paused momentarily. He put energy into his gaze and his tone. I wish for you all to be adventurers. Tension filled the room. Ainz held his breath, not that he needed to breathe any air, and observed Ainzak, waiting for a response. He watched as if Ainzak was an opponent who had just collapsed from a special attack. I think it's a very enticing proposal. The light in Ainz's eyes seemed to dim. Usually, the next comment would explain why it wouldn't work. But I need to gather opinions from a lot of different people about whether we can accept it. Certainly, if you really want to utilize adventurers in that fashion, it sounds like a dream, and it would make sense for the guild to be structured under the country's umbrella. If you were asking for the opinion of one former adventurer, I'd like to cooperate. Huh, so this went well then? I see. Ainz leaned back on the sofa. The joy of his presentation going well slowly overcame him. It was like the feeling of leaving a client's office and calling one's company from a cafe to report in. He wanted to shout, "We did it." He never thought he would be able to use his experience as an adventurer in this way. No, it was probably because he had that experience that he had even come up with this idea. He remembered there was one other thing he had to bring up about the nation of darkness's future. Oh, there's one other thing, Ainz said, holding up a bony finger. Earlier when you mentioned protecting the people, you agreed that it meant humanoids, right? Regarding the fact that adventurers existed to protect the people. Yes, that is what I said, Your Majesty. And when I was talking about invasions, you said you didn't care about subhumans, right? Ainzak nodded as if to say, what about it? The nation of darkness accepts all races as citizens, not only humanoids, but subhumans and grotesques as well. If you say that the purpose of adventurers is to protect the people, I am going to have you protect subhumans and grotesques as well. Ainzak's eyes widened. What are you saying? What's wrong? I don't understand what you all riled up about. My country doesn't distinguish between humanoids, subhumans, and grotesques. As long as I rule over them, they are all people. That's insanity. It can be done, Your Majesty. You don't think so? I heard there's a country north of the kingdom called the Council State. Isn't it true that all sorts of races coexist there? I have heard that about that country, but no. You ray telling us to coexist with races that consider us food? Aha, yes, that's right. I 1T permit free citizens of the nation of darkness to eat one another. ILL enact a law against it. Does that make it better? I 1T stop anyone eating people from other countries, although I don't mean to go poking my nose into my citizens' diets. Well, wait, it's probably not good for your mental health to see members of your own race being sold as meat at market. I guess there's some room to think this over more. According to Lupus Regina, the villagers in Khan were coexisting with goblins and ogres, so it probably wasn't impossible for the city dwellers, although he understood that it would be more difficult to manage with more people involved. What in the world are you thinking? Don't act like you ray so confused. Or rather, why don't you cooperate with your fellow living beings? As an undead, I can comprehend it. To me, there's no difference between humans and goblins. Everyone is equal under my rule. Of course, above you all are me and the people working directly beneath me. Ainzak's face went through a flurry of expressions. It eventually composed itself once again. So goblins will be beneath you as citizens of your country. Were you not listening to everything I just said? I told you ogres and orcs would be included, didn't I? Oh, of course I was listening. I thought you meant as slaves. That's just the sort of thing I would expect someone from the race that enslaved elves to say. ILL repeated, all citizens beneath me will be equal. Ainz felt, as he looked at Ainzak, who seemed to be breathing raggedly, that the man wasn't grasping his intentions. To speak in extreme terms, all citizens would be slaves of the inhabitants of the great tomb of Nazareth, but Ainz didn't phrase it that way. It wasn't necessary. If they didn't notice, he didn't care. There are already a number of goblins under my protection. A group of them will probably come to Rantle soon. You should try talking with them. I have no doubt your conception of what a goblin is will be shattered. And lizard men apparently don't eat meat very often at all. They eat fish. Dryads and Trents are fond of clean water and sunlight. They only attack humans out of self-defense. You rule over all those races already? Of course. I've already had a number of subhumans and grotesques as citizens in the past. Oh, but we're getting off topic. Ainzak, can I assume your stance on the Adventurers Guild being absorbed as an organization of the Nation of Darkness is one of approval? If you ray not lying, your majesty, then I am fine with it. You sure are a worrywart. I am not lying. I am going to have adventurers pursue the unknown. If possible, he wanted them to go in composite teams of various races. I'll leave the explanation to the adventurers. Anyone who doesn't like the idea of being an adventurer in the Nation of Darkness as a constituent member of the country is free to leave. You ray sure, forcing them to work 1T turn out well for either of us. Still, I think making big changes to the way things work would be a pain, so let us maintain the current system to some extent. For the time being, the main change will be a review committee from the Nation of Darkness. This committee will preside over the guild master. It was also important to provide added value so the adventurers would want to belong to the Nation of Darkness' guild. As for national support, first, I'll establish a training center. Having adventurers getting killed by unknown monsters in uncharted lands would be a major loss. I want training to be more thorough at a training center that incorporates actual battles against monsters. Maybe building a dungeon and having them clear it would be a good idea. It would help them get accustomed to team combat as well. He could have the auto-spawning undead from Nazareth work on that. And then once it was done, they could be the monsters in it. That's a wonderful idea, but it sounds like quite the construction project. Ainz would use undead who didn't require a salary, so he would probably be able to build it cheaply. But he didn't have to admit that. It was important to make people indebted to him when he could. I am sure it will require an unprecedented initial investment, but it's within the realm of necessary costs. Adventurers are important assets to the Nation of Darkness. Thank you, Your Majesty, it's nothing. So what do you think? Adventurers should find this an attractive offer, right? Certainly, it's quite enticing for lower-ranking adventurers, but what if they switch to the kingdom or empire once they trained up? I 1T allow it. It's going to be an organ of the state. That would be treason, I see. I'll need to explain that properly. What would attract medium and high-ranking adventurers? That would probably be the amount of compensation. Well, you can eat on dreams alone. There's that. but also the fact that you can face powerful monsters without collecting powerful weapons, armor, and items. Those items are expensive. So it's about gear. Mass-producing items would make them cheaper. However, there were very many high-ranking adventurers. That meant the items would be custom order equipment. This would raise the price again. The other issue was probably a lack of creators who could produce such items. Perhaps it would be a good idea to solve that problem too. I also want to let as many adventurers as possible know about my proposal, the ones in the Kingdom and Empire as well. Do you have any ideas how to do that? The Adventurers Guild you're creating will be far better than the ones in the Kingdom and Empire. If you spread information everywhere, the other countries' guilds will take measures to stop you from poaching their members. Adventurers are like a trump card in some ways. I don't think there would be very many rulers happy to see an exodus of talent from their country. You're right. What do you think we should do? It's difficult to provide an immediate answer. Could I have some time to think? Indeed, I need to think about what to do going forward as well. He felt he was biting off a bit more than he could chew with this major plan. He would probably need to take a step back and think. He also needed to talk things over with some people. Stood. All right, he was about to say, if you'll excuse me then, but that wasn't what a king would say. That's it. Farewell. Ainzak stood and bowed. Understood, your majesty. Without looking back, Ainz left the room through the door that Fifth opened. He wanted to sigh, but he was still in the other party's building. It was too soon. Followed by his cherubim, Ainz left the Adventurers Guild. Then, after walking a little while, he finally emitted a small sigh. I am beat. Ainz Ulgaun wasn't saying he was tired, but Satoru Suzuki inside him was clamoring for a break to rest his overheated brain. I'll take a break, before talking to Albedo about the idea to fold the Adventurers Guild into our organization. I have to think of some pros, so she won't be able to pass on the idea. I guess I have a lot to do. Ainz walked on in silence. He prayed that something good would come to mind while walking and refrained from using travel magic. Ainzak opened the door leading to his office, and a new guest entered. The extremely lean, nervous-looking man with a delicate frame was Ainzak's old friend, the head of the Wizards Guild, Theo Rakishia. What a surprise, Pluton. I never imagined the King of Darkness would show up while we were talking. Do you think he caught on to something? I don't know. Ainzak had been in a meeting with Rakishia since early in the morning, as was their habit. Since the city had been captured by the King of Darkness, they met only in the morning. This was because they knew many undead disliked the sun. Of course, given the undead patrolling the city, that measure was useful only for easing their minds. Their meetings were generally for sharing information, but they hadn't touched upon the future plans of the guilds. Mostly because while the Nation of Darkness was being established, those who could leave for the Kingdom or Empire had already left. The Wizards Guild had sent most of their magic items away, and only a few members remained in the city. It was essentially as if the city's Wizards Guild had disbanded, but in terms of intelligence analysis, there were many important matters that required attention. Adventurers had weak national ties, but would they be accepted in the Nation of Darkness? Would he send people after fugitive adventurers? If they made it over the border, would there be international demands to turn them in? What about wizards? How could they reach out to Momon, who had put himself in harm's way to protect the people? And how should the Adventurers Guild treat Momon? The shrines had kept silent, and the King of Darkness had drawn a line, but would that status quo continue? Would a resistance rise up in the future? These were all difficult problems. The pair had trouble answering, even after wringing all their knowledge out. If some sort of incident happened, and they weren't prepared, they would be in trouble. The biggest problem was the shrines. Would the shrines allow themselves to be ruled by a king who was one of their intolerable enemies, an undead? Their current silence made the question even more unnerving. There were also the shrines from neighboring countries. If they weren't careful, it was possible that the shrines from other countries would independently declare a holy war on them. This would force the shrines within the city to make a move as well. The reason no one from the shrines was present at these meetings was because their position was uncertain. Ainzak and Rakishia were wary about inviting them, only to end up embroiled in some conspiracy. That said, they didn't think the shrines could beat the Nation of Darkness. What they were worried about was a massacre. If Momon became a sword for the King of Darkness and started slaughtering them, what would they do? And in case something like that truly came to pass, who would provide medical treatment for the citizens of this country? That was what they had been getting headaches about when the King of Darkness showed up. But he did notice you were here. The fact that the king had looked at the door and laughed to himself proved it.